I promised a little bit of silliness and a little bit of roleplay, and I am going to deliver. But before we start on our roleplay adventure, I need to design the ship, or rather pick the ship and name it, because we need something to work with. So I also want to proceed and progress in my FTL adventure, and there are some ships I am yet to unlock. And I was thinking to myself, well, which ship did I not yet try to unlock on the previous streams? And the answer is Stealth Cruiser Type B. And I warn you, I'm terrible at commanding a stealth cruiser, but I'm gonna try nonetheless. Although the Lioness Cruiser also is tempting, but no, it's gonna be Stealth Cruiser. Let's see if I can unlock the other one, while also role-playing. Spoiler alert, I don't think I will be able to. So anyway, the code sign for our ship will be Pangolin Space Navy Anteater. There we go. Actually, I want a space in there because that would sound cooler. Excellent. PSN Anteater. And we'll have a lovely crew. So first of all, the captain is... that's not the captain, that's just a pilot. So the pilot will be called Jimmy Longtongue. Oh, Longtongue. Okay, Longtongue. Now, it cannot be Longtongue. It's too bad. It's just gonna be Jim. He's Jim. Jim Longtongue. Jim Longtongue. That's way better. Excellent. Now, the next up we're gonna have another crew member, and they kind of look the same. No humans are the same. You're gonna look like this. I like this look actually. You're gonna be a lady, and you're gonna be called Frying Pan. Excellent. And finally, we've got Jose. You're not Jose. Yeah, I have a way better name for you, and it's gonna be Lego. Because I'll tell you why in a second. I already figured it all out. So, Pangolin Space Navy's Anteater is ready for our journey. So I hope you're tucked in, your seatbelts are on, and I wish you a pleasant flight. Let's press that start button. And with that in mind, let us get ready to start. I'll just make sure that everything is in order. Yeah, the live stream seems healthy. I will not be checking that out too often in the future, so I'll just make sure that it is. Did I post announcement on Twitch? I did. Everything seems hunky-dory. Dashboard says my connection is stable. We're now good to go. All systems report online and ready for the journey. So, with that in mind, allow me to formally introduce myself. Captain's log. Date and time unknown. This is Pangolin Advisor, acting captain of PSN Anteater. We've been assigned a crucial mission for the Federation, and that sole mission might end the so-called rebellion. I'm joined on this difficult task of carrying vital information to our Federation headquarters by some people that, well, I would never ever go on without them. We've got Jim Longtongue, who is our pilot, and trust me when I say this, he saved my life many times in the past. His flying skills are extraordinary, though he is yet to show it. We've got Frying Pan. She's gonna cook those bastards nicely as soon as they try to stop us from delivering the message. And of course, Lego. Nobody really knows his name, but he always says, let's go, let's go, let's go already. So we just call him Lego. With that in mind, however, I ordered my crew to power up the engines and get ready to depart as soon as I got word that our weapon systems were online and operational. I made sure to memorize the buttons for activating our stealth systems, because you guessed it, I'm an acting captain. I was just a door opener yesterday, but the captain just GTFO'd out of here. So now this crew has to deal with me, but since I have the most experience with doors, well, there's nobody else who could captain this ship as well as I could. I ordered to jump into a location where I knew a ship would await us, hoping we could potentially make our gain. But we found a rebel automated scout floating near the beacon instead, and we could attempt to get some of its data stores without activating it, or just scrap it from any use for any useful scrap. I decided to take our chances and hack into its data core. and I was able to get some information about the sector, as well as take more scrap than I otherwise would have been able to, which got me intrigued, but I didn't ask any questions how my crew members were able to find that. With more information about how the system is laid out, I ordered my crew to continue moving along. Decided to move away from an environmental danger nearby and spot a small route, and as soon as we jumped in, we spotted a small rebel crew, not rebel crew, although I assume there is some crew on board that rebel ship that we found nearby, and it's been refitted for transport rather than combat. It probably doesn't want to engage my ship, but I want their goods. I'll need their goods if I am to make it to the Federation HQ alive. Let us get ready to secure their cargo by force. They are charging the FTL. This has to be a fast job. I cannot auto-fire on this mission. I need to be ready for ducking away from the enemy shots, so... First of all, let us evade. Okay, we were not able to evade the enemy fire, but that is okay. Let us disable the enemy weapon systems and then target the enemy's everything with our beam. After we disable the enemy health systems, the enemy piloting, all that's left now is to not get killed by the enemy weapon systems, which so far are doing a very good job at just that. I ordered the Lego to fix the situation, and I targeted my weapons to disable the enemy shields soon after. With that in mind, the enemy ship is ready to meet its maker, and it has been destroyed. Lego has been reported to have sustained minor injuries, but this should not be a major issue. The ship has, and it appears that the rebel ship was transporting prisoners. Unfortunate, all of them died, but at the very least we got some fresh corpse juice to drink. No, that's not the right thing to say. Not at all. We're supposed to be pangolins, we termites, not prisoners. Although, when you're in a pinch and real hungry, I suppose prisoners would do. Either way, I wouldn't have Lego be injured and on duty. I had to send him off to the mate bay and make sure that he is resuscitated and feeling way better about his life and odds of our survival rather. And as soon as he was well and ready for active duty again, I initiated the jump command once more, heading for a distress call I knew that was signaled nearby. I ordered my ship's computer to prepare me some tea, but as it was extraordinarily hot, I wasn't able to drink it right off the bat. And as soon as we jumped in, we found an unidentified ship, badly damaged and assaulted by a space pirate. The victim begged us for survival, and I wouldn't have it any other way but to be a hero, and decided to attack the pirate even though I was just a lowly door opener. I'm no hero. I just want to get by and get back to, I would say, my family if I ever had one. The captain had one. I'm just the door opener. Pirate ship stops its pursuit and powers up its weapons, but this will be no good. They do have a missile system and some lasers, but I have a stealth system. And although my engines could be a little bit more efficient, it is going to be okay. I engaged the stealth systems and then prepared to fire aboard the enemy ship. Missing both of my shots, which was mighty embarrassing. Frying pan, get your act together and destroy that ship before it destroys us, as so far it managed to disable our O2 systems, which is not optimal. I was able to disable the enemy oxygen supplies, as well as some of the enemy weapons, but by far not all of them, which was, well, somewhat unfortunate. I ordered Lego to fix the situation with the engines and fired one more shot with my beam, which was able to cut through the enemy's armor and finish them off. I got some salvage out of this, but my ship has undertaken some damage as well, which was unfortunate. Upon closer inspection, I realized that the ship under attack was a rebel scout. It was too damaged, however, to put up a fight, so I had to decide what to do with it. I could save their lives, the rebel lives, and convince them to delay the fleet, or I could just destroy the ship to salvage it. I'm no hero, like I said, even though I sometimes try to pose as one. I decided to blow up the ship and recover whatever was left. Apparently I left the crew alive as well, which was very nice of me. I actually thought I was going to kill them, but it turns out my crew is more merciful than I am. And out of this, I got a scrap recovery arm, which is absolutely amazing. It will allow us to sustain this ship in space for longer periods of time. I ordered Jim to fix the O2 generator since, well, it was bust after disengagement and needed some fixing. And I just realized that Frying Pan has been on engine duty, whereas she was supposed to be arming the weapons. And while it turns out she's better at operating the engines by now, I couldn't have it this way. I had to change the crew positions just so that they fit my imagination. The crew really hates me, by the way. They have no idea where I am on the ship as well, but the pirate's cabin is hidden deeply underneath the bulk. I decided to jump into another system with possible ship detected, hoping I could find even more scrap before I visit the shop, hoping I would be able to find some emergency shield generators over there. Upon completing my jump, however, I received a message from a nearby ship, and apparently it was a pirate demanding a fee. I scanned their weapon systems quickly, but as it turns out they had some very, very weak ones, and I decided to reject their offer and get ready to destroy all life that remained on the enemy ship. Unfortunately, stealth systems are not the best at avoiding bombs, but I was ready to avoid the enemy laser shots and was able to avoid both of them just fine. Next up, I opened fire on the enemy systems, and I was slightly too slow to pierce through the enemy hull with my miniature beam. That was an issue and a mistake I shall not make again. I lost my stealth systems, which is a bit of a problem. No! And I was too slow on my uptake again. It seems like I have grown used to my time-bending powers of the past. But thankfully this time around I was able to disable the enemy shield system, and my weapon systems have been broken. This is what happens when you put a door opener in charge of a ship. Everything starts breaking down, so I had Lego join Frying Pan on repair duty, trying to salvage this entire operation. Dual lasers have been engaged and they are charging up, and soon after I started charging up my mini beam. As it turns out that Jim has taken some damage in the recent assault, so I had Lego fix the stealth systems as I prepared to fire upon the enemy shooting too fast. But the beam weapon again was damaged, and I should probably start firing upon the enemy missile systems by now, since the enemy, well, they're just tearing me to shreds. And I could see that any messages I used to receive from the HQ I could no longer receive, as one of my agents from the HQ stopped paying attention to me, knowing that I was clearly incompetent for this job. Nevertheless, I tried real hard to be more competent and started charging my mini beam, perhaps a little bit too late, but it was enough to disable the enemy system, and I was also able to start venting the fire into space, hoping it wasn't too late. The miniature beam is ready, as is my stealth system, but for the time being it was most important that I keep damaging the enemy ship. I was able to... I could accept the enemy offer, which is not the best offer I could take, but I suppose this time around I'll allow the enemy to get out of this unharmed and get whatever they are offering. With that in mind, my crew is in need of some serious apologies and also some serious healing up work, so I send them over to the medbay, hoping they would feel a little bit better about their odds after they are well healed. And using this to my advantage, I decided to get some tea for myself. Well, I wasn't quite able to get it, but I'll be able to drink it soon enough. So with that in mind, I'm going to close all my doors and jump to the next system. I could visit the distress code before visiting the shop, or a location of possible should be detected, but sometimes, I don't know, maybe I have a multiple personality disorder. Sometimes I feel a bit like a hero, sometimes like a common thug. I located a nearby human mining colony where a known disease has spread virulently. Unfortunately, I'm germophobic, so I decided to ignore the request to send in my crew, and I decided to move on. I'll never risk my fellow crew members, even if they hate me. I love them to their bitter end. I meant to say my bitter end, but I suppose it will also be their bitter end if we continue on like this. An automated rebel scout was attacking a small refueling outpost nearby, and I decided to intervene as the refueling scout, well, it had a beam which was mighty dangerous, but they also had a hacking tool actually. It could spoil our doom, and I decided to avoid the conflict as it was too risky of an undertaking. I decided to make my way towards the shop in hopes I can find something decent. The traveling merchant did have a shield system, but unfortunately his price was a little bit too high to my standards, and I will need to sell about almost 100 scrap in order to get the shields. I was desperate to have them, but in no way I could get them unless I were to sell my titanium system casing, which is just so valuable. But even then, I'll be up to 92 scrap, which wouldn't be quite enough, and long-range scanners are just essential for my success. as is the scrap recovery arm. I wasn't ready to part with any of my weapons either, so my dreams of shielding would have to wait until another day. Cloning Bay is a tempting one, but I decided against it as well. I could however grab another crew member. And I decided that Brian was a decent option, but again I couldn't afford him. In the end, all I was comfortable with doing was fixing my hull ever so slightly. I decided that I didn't need more fuel. Obviously, fuel would probably be very helpful later down the line, but for the time being, what is most important is to be able to get out of here alive. I ordered another jump, this time to another location with a possible ship waiting for us. Let us see if this is a rebel, friend or foe. There's a single ship at the beacon as it turns out, and they hailed me asking for some help since their FTL navigation system was shot. I decided to accept this offer as they offered 2 fueling cells right off the bat without any questions asked. But then I had to deny their request as, well, their destination was just in the wrong direction and we would be caught by the rebel fleet. They hailed me on the comms angrily, demanding that I lead into the destination or at least return the fuel cells. But like I said, I am no hero. I found the source of the Tresco, however, nearby, and a small research station. It appears that the laboratory fire got out of control and was threatening to destroy the entire station, and the fire suppression system was not responding. I could send my crew to help put out the fire, but I would never risk their lives. And docking would endanger our ship to take more damage, and I'm not sure if she could take it. I had to leave. I shut down the communications and tried to not catch the annoyed gaze of any of my crew as I made my way towards the captain's quarters again and ordered us to get as far away from the system as possible. I arrived at the long-range beacon and found an advanced rebel automated ship remained stationed near a small rebel space station. Sensors indicated that it's a storage vessel for military goods, so I decided to cloak and try to access the cache. However, before I got close enough, the ship still managed to detect me despite my cloaking and prepared to open fire, as well as hack me with its automated tool and target my weapon systems. That is the worst. Well, I didn't have much else to do. Terrified, I prepared to stealth my way through, but I did so just moments after I was hit by a devastating beam of light. Literal light that actually damaged me real badly, and then soon after my weapons were disabled yet again before I was able to fire them. This was an issue, and everything was quickly started becoming just horrible. I decided to vent the medbay since I needed to get through to the oxygen system and reactivate. Oh, hold on a second, I needed to fix the stealth systems first, even though they were just, well, EMP'd to high heavens. Everything was going quite poorly, unfortunately for me and my little ship, but I was able to at least damage the enemy weapon systems so that I wouldn't take more damage in the near future. Next up, it was a question of fixing my oxygen supply and getting my weapons ready and operational again. I decided to cloak just to buy myself some more time before another EMP hit me. Unfortunately, the door controls were no longer operational, so I couldn't vent the fire into space, and I prepared to take even more damage as I reactivated my weapon systems before they were drained for once more. Well, there isn't anything else I could do at this point other than try to blow up the enemy ship. The things started going sour real fast and I could hear my crew panicking, but I ordered them to not panic because if anything can save us, that is the lack of panic, and I was able to disable the enemy hacking device and as well as damage the enemy weapon systems. Probably not enough, unfortunately, but perhaps that was a mistake. I didn't have my beam ready, and the enemy was able to damage our ship once more, but thankfully that wasn't enough and I was ready to damage the enemy shooting, and now I knew that we were truly saved. Unfortunately, next maneuver would be a difficult one, as I had to order my crew to enter. Actually, this would be an easy one, since the door control was still under our control. I salvaged what I could from the broken ship, and the station that it was guarding was a storage size for various resources. So in the end we got a decent haul out of all of this, but we still had to fix our ship. I was very glad I spent all of that scrap on fixing our hull, because otherwise we would be floating scrap by now. I drank some tea as I watched my crew repair all the damage to our ship, and I pressurized it all again once more. Moreover, I made a mental note of the fact that how delicious this tea is. Truly the best. As soon as my crew finished its repairs, I closed all the doors again and decided to be on my way as quickly as possible. Next sector probably, hopefully, will be a better one. I had two options. I could go to a safe haven in an NG-controlled sector, far away from rebel influence, or so I hoped, or travel to an uncharted nebula. With our optimized and powerful long-range sensor array, the uncharted nebula posed a threat to our ship that I wasn't willing to take, despite the fact that in this sector of the galaxy, in those sectors of the galaxy rather, things are relatively calm and there are plenty of opportunities to get some extra scrap. Nonetheless, I saw death on that day and I wasn't willing to let it find me and finish me off. I ordered my crew to go straight to the engine-controlled sector. Therefore, the Federation has brought tough times for those robotic life forms, and tough times for my English skills as well, apparently. But I was hoping I could find some friends here. There was a store nearby. I was very tempted to visit it, but it was a potential dead end. But after consulting the charts, I realized that it was not a dead end, but I probably didn't have anything to sell at the store. However, a rough patch job was all I needed to feel more confident about my odds. An engine ship held me and said that its engine upgrade is necessary for traveling home, and that it had to sell some equipment to get more scrap. Well, another system with shields was available for purchase, but unfortunately there wasn't anything I could do to acquire it. I didn't have enough scrap. That was a tough one. Long-range scanners, well, that's something I already have as in a backup DNA tank, was not under any circumstances necessary for me. A backup battery is nice and all, but all I really need is, like I said, a patch job. And I was ready to be on my way again. I was thinking, however, I could upgrade my engines a little bit more, but I spent my scrap. What I decided to do instead was upgrade the cloaking device. That would buy me some more time in our next combat and also allow me to keep the cloaking up in an event of another catastrophic failure, like in that last fight against a ship. I already forgot what ship it was. Some ship damaged our cloaking systems and it was nice. And I soon congratulated myself on the decision to upgrade our cloaking sensors, as we encountered a pirate freighter of a Zoltan nature with a powerful shooting system I could never punch through. It appears that I arrived in a system where the ship hid behind a planet, and apparently it was a Dread Pirate Tuku nonetheless. I never heard of him, but I knew that visiting him, seeing him, was trouble. I got ready I powered down our oxygen supply to have maximum chance of evading the enemy shots as soon as the enemy opened fire. I activated our stealth systems, and soon after I got ready to activate my weapon systems as soon as we came out of stealth. Unfortunately, poorly targeted my laser system, which cost me being able to actually shoot down the enemy Zoltan shields faster, but I was still able to set a fire onto the enemy shield generator and then punch a hole through the systems as well. Unfortunately, our O2 systems were still down, and I've missed another opportunity to, set fire to the enemy engine array. And soon after I found out that there was fire on my own ship, but thankfully I was able to disable some of the enemy's weapon systems and I was able to stealth away in time. Actually, not quite. I still took another rocket to the face and my engine room was disabled. The ship explodes and it left behind a substantial collection of scrap material, but on my ship still had a red alert signaled as my door control room was damaged, and well, I started losing pressure in some of my systems, but thankfully the doors held, the fire then spread, and eventually it was put out by the lack of oxygen. Excellent. I ordered my crew to heal up a little bit. They suffered some minor burns as they jumped through the fire like the heroes they are, and soon after I told them to return to their stations, and I was ready to be on my way to some other sectors. So it looks like the next jump should be an easy one. So let us hope this is exactly the case. It looks like the place we jumped into was a site of a recent battle, either ashore of Mantis Falls or the NG weren't disposed to go peacefully. Either way, I had plenty of pieces to look through, and for once my crew didn't have to look at me in disgust, as I didn't have to loot any living bodies this time around. Either way, I was ready to jump into the next area, and with my amusement, I found that there's another store waiting for me. Huh, good news then. Maybe I'll get another patch-up job. I checked and again, to my amusement, I found that the NG, all of them had shields for sale, but none of them were willing to sell it for low enough for me to actually acquire them. What I was tempted to get instead was another crew member, desperate enough to, serve with us on this hunk of junk. Of course, I would probably have to sell something for that poor bastard soul, and I really wasn't willing to part with any of my current systems, so with a heavy heart, I had to admit to myself that I am not capable of purchasing any of this store's wares, but a patch-up job is always nice and always welcome, so I decided to do just that and get ready to be on my way just shortly after I upgraded my reactor, taking advantage of our short time we had to rest at the station. This allowed me to constantly power my stealth systems without having to turn off my oxygen generation every time I wanted to stealth away. My crew was so grateful for this, they said they would have given me a flower if they had one. Actually, they didn't say that, I just wish they did. I'm so alone. But nevertheless, I decided to carry forward. The distress signal I received in the previous location was coming from a small space station orbiting an uninhabited planet. The satellite defense system has gone haywire and the repair crew couldn't approach without being fired upon, and they were looking for me to help fix or disable the system. Well, I promised to help them a little bit and consider my options. I wouldn't fire the defense system since that wouldn't help anybody, but I had improved clocking devices and I thought that I could use that to disable the enemy system. It looks like, my ship's cloaking was enough to fool the defense system, and once I was closer I was able to disable it without damaging it. It wasn't my best work, but honestly, people appreciated it enough to give me a very fat reward, and I was happy with the haul I got. I got a message from the HQ as well, the Twitch headquarters, one of my officers, the Fox, wished me good luck and to have fun. Well, there will be no fun on this journey through the dead cold desert of space, but I decided to try and oblige his wish nonetheless, as I jumped in once more. So soon after, I don't know what soon after means, but soon after, I noticed an NG colony hiding on the other side of the nearby moon, and it looked like they were excavating equipment cache from Federation Mantis War and suggested it would be useful to lead the pursuing rebel fleet. I had no use for missiles, so I considered booby-trapping the cache to buy myself more time in the sector, but I decided it might be a better idea to just secure it and keep it for myself. And, the cache wasn't that plentiful, but it did have a system repair drone. I thought I could sell that later on if I visited another shop. And maybe one day I would actually be able to afford a stealth system. Not a stealth system, but a shield system. Already had a stealth system. My dimension must have been getting the best of me. Either way, I found another space station filled with thousands, hundreds of thousands repair drills. Okay, there were just a dozen of them, but I like to exaggerate. And I received an automated message and saying that if I have enough scrap, I could repair my damage. But as it turns out, I already got a repair job and didn't need another one, so I ignored the station and powered up my FTL drive. Didn't go straight for the store as I knew I didn't have enough scrap for anything useful in there. In the next location, the scanners showed intelligent life forms on a nearby planet. I decided to stick around for a little while and investigate a bit closer. I landed a small shuttle in an enormous field whose only occupants were small, brightly colored, six-legged, horse-like animals. Could that be what the scanners picked up? I decided to... I was tempted to communicate peacefully, but I could see no intelligence in their eyes, and decided to bring some of those creatures on board so I could maybe sell them to some traders later down the line. Unfortunately, the creatures quickly turned hostile, and the stampede forced me to draw my weapons and rushed back to the shuttle. Thankfully, nobody was injured, but I had to leave. I was tempted to visit the store, maybe with the drones I had to sell I could get something decent out of it. I decided it was a risk worth taking. One few here and there wouldn't hurt. So I got in contact with them and asked how much were they willing to give me for a contact drone and a system repair drone. They gave me a little bit, not enough to upgrade my shieldings, of course, or rather install my shielding system. But then I considered my options once more. If I were to truly sell my titanium system casing, I would just be, I would have 110 scrap out of 125 required, so I'd need to sell 15 more scrap to actually afford this. And I had a long-range scanner that costed exactly 15 scrap. Coincidence? I thought not, but I also thought this offer, it was too tempting and too stupid. Without long-range scanners, I could never know what I'm getting into. I decided against this. But what I could also find in the store was a drone control, which wouldn't be that worthwhile since I just sold a repair drone and some other drones, and a crew teleporter, which also wasn't so useful since I had no crew to teleport. But there was some poor unfortunate souls willing to work for me, the door opener, so I decided to hire somebody. I thought that we might need an engineer to fix our ship since our ship continuously got into trouble, so I hired Scoop so that he could scoop out some goods for us on some other moons. I don't know where I'm going with that joke right there. Needed its scoops, but thankfully he doesn't have a sense of humor, he's a machine. Some machines might have one, but he just doesn't. He's this kind of grumpy old cat that never does. I decided to send him over to the door control. Maybe one day he'll be able to take over as captain of the ship. Just like I did. The door control truly gives you the keys to everything aboard a ship. I decided to jump into one more peaceful location before I visited a location of a possible ship nearby. As soon as I finished the jump, I received a hail from a nearby civilian entry vessel, and the captain appeared on my screen asking if I could assist in debugging. I just decided to listen to their problems. And they found a malfunctioning mantis which believed it was human, and it would only receive input from human, so they requested for an assistance. Well, I did have a human crew member, so I decided to send in my human, trusting that the NG had everything under control and no harm could come to my crew member. The mantis seemed to be grateful to see another human and introduced itself to be Robert Smith. Apparently I decided that a mantis is always helpful even if it believes to be a human. So, a colony, I actually didn't realize what was happening early. Before I jumped to the next screen, apparently I drank some whiskey with the mantis just, to break the ice, as they say. I blacked out, and the next thing I knew was a colony that was a mining operation which specialized in FTL fuel. Robert's family, the head engineers, were excited to see him and very grateful for his return. Alright, he didn't want to sail with me. Either way, apparently he'd run away to join the Federation like his older brother, but was never accepted onto a ship. Well, worry not. I would be willing to offer him a position, and he accepted. Excellent. Well, with that in mind, I had a perfect position for him. The watch duty. I sent him over to watch over the comms and check whatever bounty and booty we could find in the future. I decided to save my crew positions and be on my way. I decided I had the time to visit one more location before making my way to the long-range beacon, so I went to the location where I knew my long-range scanners detected the ship. I've overheard a mantis commentary, which apparently said that, they are looking for some bodies to kill, so I decided that I could try to stay hidden, or I could take on the enemy ship. They did have a cloning bay, but they had no crew teleporters, and their weapon systems were fairly good, but not good enough to my advanced stealth system, so I decided to attack them head on, make good use out of their stealth systems, and get ready to destroy the enemy system. Ship rather, and loot it clean. I waited for the enemy to start firing before I engaged my stealth, making sure that the enemy shots would entirely miss me. And then I damaged the enemy shields, missile weapon systems, and literally everything else. So with that, I decided to fire upon the enemy bridge, make sure that the enemy cannot survive any longer, and I finished them off with a miniature beam. The ship exploded and left more scrap as usual. Happy with the haul we got, I decided to order my crew to make it to the exit beacon. We're very close to the chest. We were cutting it very close to the chest, but thankfully It was alright. I arrived at the long-range beacon and found a rebel checkpoint monitoring the location. A number of civilian ships were awaiting inspection, and any of them could be Federation loyalists. The rebels didn't notice me yet. So, I had the option to stay hidden, but I thought to myself, well, my scrap reserves are pretty low, and I need my shields at some point, so I decided to fend for myself, attack and escape. I accidentally bended time for a second, but soon after I didn't, and turns out the enemy had intruders aboard, which was somewhat unfortunate. I decided to engage stealth when I realized the enemy had an actual beam weaponry, and then I indiscriminately attacked the enemy weapon systems to disable the beam weaponry. Soon after I was hit by an enemy fire, but thankfully it was alright as I was able to completely disable the enemy weapon systems. I ordered my missiles to continuously fire upon the enemy shield systems as I had my beam cut through the entirety of the enemy ship. Soon after, the enemy ship was lying in crumbles, and I decided to power up the medbay to heal Scoops up a little bit, in return for his faithful service. The ship exploded, we got some more hull, still not enough scrap to get ourselves a decent shield generator, or even a black market one. But honestly, I would make do with any kind of shield generator by now. The Zoltan one would be best, but I knew I could never get one like that. My next choices were difficult ones. I could either go to a balanced sector, probably Lanius controlled, or into a Mantis controlled sector where plenty of people would try to board us. But with our new human/Mantis crew member, I felt safe with doing that. However, the issue is the Mantis oftentimes employed missile weaponry as well, whereas in the balanced sector I would expect to see high-grade weaponry, but not necessarily of the missile kind. It was a difficult choice, but I decided to make it for the abandoned sector, as it had a better ambient music, and soon after I took another sip of my tea. The tea was delicious as it always was. I jumped into another location and found no signs of any ships or settlements nearby. I had no way of knowing if this area has always been uninhabited, or maybe if it has simply been erased by the Lanius. Nonetheless, this was a waste of fuel, and I prepared to move on. I found a store nearby, but I knew there would be nothing I could buy over there. And, well, without anything to gain really, I decided to just move on as quickly as I could, trying to find some scrap somewhere. I came across a Lanius ship in process of absorbing a rebel automated scout. I could scale off the Lanius vessel and then make good use of it. Well, I decided to fight it, but then again, as I was ready to order my crews to go to attack stations, I realized the Lanius ship had advanced flak weaponry, and realized that this flak weaponry would just tear my ship to pieces. But then I also realized I had stealth. I had the upper hand in this engagement. Assuming the enemy hacking device wasn't targeting my stealth room. Either way, I decided to go in for the attack and immediately activate the stealth systems to buy my weapon system small time before the hacking turned on and caused me some problems. Alright, turns out the enemy decided to hack my healing bay, which was an odd decision for sure, but a decision I appreciated, as it allowed me to lay waste of the enemy ship. It started powering up their FTL, but they had nobody piloting the ship, and I was able to easily rip it to shreds with my beam. It broke apart, and I inspected the automated rebel ship they were trying to absorb, and was able to retrieve a significant amount of data to nearby beacons. That was a good boon, and a good amount of scrap I got as well. So, with the newfound knowledge of the entire sector, I knew there was one more store which could potentially have the shooting technology. I knew I had little time, but perhaps enough time to get what I needed to buy off the shooting technology. So with that, I decided to make way to another beacon where ship detected, hoping I could maybe get another ship destroyed and scrapped for, well, scrapped. Unfortunately, shortly after arrival, a Lanius ship jumped near the beacon as well, and it started moving slowly towards me. I tried to open wide open communication channels, attempting to make contact, but they either ignored me or were unable to receive the messages. Well, I announced red alert and got ready to charge my weapons. Unfortunately, I realized the enemy had very powerful missiles and very powerful shields. The kind of shields my weapons would have a very hard time getting through. but nevertheless it was a shot and a risk I've deemed worth taking. I was ready to fire, and I was ready to fire with everything I had. So the first shot would be at the enemy shooting sisters, and then I was actually able to damage them somewhat, which was absolutely excellent. The enemy was able to disable my ult too for a while, but as the enemy missile hasn't been launched yet, I decided not to activate stealth and fire one more volley at the enemy ship, which was a complete success. The Lion ship held me and tried to beg for mercy and offered a decent enough bribe for me to consider the option, and in fact soon after I accepted that. So, happy with how things turned out to be, I decided to move into another location before making my way towards the store. However, soon after no, never mind, that is good. Let us do that. Crew, let's do this. And let us drink some tea as I examine the situation. Ooh, another pilot with strong weaponry. And teleportation devices as well. It seems like this is an upgraded pirate ship that found us. And they were amidst remains of a number of Linus ships. It hailed me and said that, well, apparently they didn't appreciate the Linus making a move on their sector. So the pirates started attacking me, and I had no choice but to start to attack them back and prepare my crew for boarding action. Well, I decided that I could just send my mantis to do the dirty job, as I decided to take... Oh no, I lost my stealth systems. This was the absolute worst case scenario. And soon after I lost my door control as well, which was again a very bad scenario for us. But I started getting my stealth systems back online, which was somewhat good. And I was able to take some more damage, which isn't good, but then I was able to dodge one missile just barely. Because, man, I'm not very good at micromanaging anything, as it turns out. I waited for my weapons to recharge, and I ordered my crew to fix everything up, as it was greatly necessary. And then I fired one more volley, and was able to cut through the enemy shields and deal some decent amount of damage. I had the Mantis fix the sensors, and I prepared to fire another shot. I had higher hopes that I could maybe make it, but the enemy hit me and broke my they broke my weapon systems. This was absolutely awful. But I had another I had my stealth system recharged and ready to fire. I dodged the enemy missile and got working on my weapon systems ASAP. I knew I had very little time, but thankfully, maybe I just barely had enough time. The enemy missile went through, and it went straight for my weapon systems. This was very bad. I decided to... Oh no, I lost my engines as well. Okay, I had my weapon systems ready and operational again, and I was able to damage the enemy shooting, but not damage enough to actually disable it. Everything was going quite poorly, very, very quickly in fact. There was a fire next to our stealth chamber. There was very little I could do about it. Thankfully, I was able to inflict enough damage on the enemy ship to beg them for mercy. Little did they know that my ship was also in a very, very bad shape. I accidentally bended time again, and then moved everybody to to stop the fire from spreading, as I knew that if the fire was allowed to spread and I took any more hull damage, this would have been absolutely awful. I sent in my crew to the fire to fight it, hoping they wouldn't die, but I knew that I could count on them on this dangerous, dangerous mission. And soon enough, did they manage to take out the fire? Looks like they did, so I took some more tea as I contemplated the fact that my hull was now at critical. However, critical is always better than, well, lost, so... With that, I was content with the fact that I was able to survive, although just by a smidge. I was this close to being killed, and so was my crew, but we were able to live to fight another day. Well, time to drink some more tea to celebrate that fact. I had to make one more jump before I made it to the store, but thankfully no ships were picked up on our long-range scanner, so I was hoping this would be an easy jump. And as soon after teleporting, or rather finishing our jump, a Federation science craft docked with I found a Federation science craft docked with a few Linus ships. I hailed them and asked what was going on, and it appears that they were trying to understand the new visitors. So I asked if there was anything they could do to help my mission, and well, it turns out they had some scrap and a few drones that they could just donate to me. I was very happy, as this was enough to get my shooting up. If the next store offered it, of course, but I had every right to believe that it would. I arrived at the beacon to discover a bunch of liner ships docked at what appeared to be a station. I was almost ready to leave, but then I remembered, hey, this is the place where I was able to buy and sell stuff, so I decided to stick around and finally purchased my shooting system. Now I needed to upgrade my reactor to power the shields, of course, but the biggest hassle and worry was behind me. I also had to do one more thing, however, and that is fix the current hull issue. Our hull was critical, and even after spending all our scrap, I was unable to get it. I was only able to get it just barely past the red. I decided that as much as I loved the titanium system casing, I had to say goodbye to it, as it was more important to make sure that my ship was still operational. Man, those weapons were sure tempting as well. For instance, the glaive beam or hull missiles. Hull missiles, oh I desire them. And I realized that all it would take is sell both of my weapons, and then I thought to myself, I would never sell those weapons, I need them. So instead I decided to fix my ship some more and upgrade my reactor as well to be able to divert more power and operate my power with a little bit more ease. And then I decided to fix a little bit more of my hull, just to barely get into the green territory again, to make me feel more confident. I powered on the medbay, it powered up our very first set of shields, and I started feeling more confident about our chances to reach the Federation HQ. I wasn't ready to divert power to Indus just yet. I knew tough times would be ahead of us, as I would have to juggle the O2 systems just to make sure that I were able to power up my engines to the maximum potential. With that in mind, I stumbled across a badly damaged Linus craft. It jumped away as soon as it saw me, and soon after I had discovered a bunch of destroyed robo-automated ships. And that was my lucky day. I scrapped whatever remained and decided to power up the generator a bit more to save me the hassle of micromanaging my ship and turning off the O2 generator. It's never fun to do that. Your crew really hates you when you do that. I decided to make my way to a distress call, knowing it was most likely a trap since I detected a ship in that region. Soon after battle music played, and I knew that I was in some deep problems. And looks like, yes, those were pirates using an emergency beacon again for their own goals. So selfish, so self-centered. Well, I analyzed their weapon systems and I realized very quickly they had a very powerful halberd beam that would cut my ship to pieces, even despite my new and powerful shooting. Well, my very basic shooting really. So I decided to engage the stealth systems as quickly as I was able to do so. This also disallowed the enemy to board my ship ASAP, and it gave me the time to charge my weapon array that I will then use to target the enemy shields and then disable the enemy engines. So I quickly realized that my pilot was in danger of being killed by the enemy invader, so I sent in the Mantis to save the pilot and force the enemy to get out of the area, and then realized that I was fired upon as I forgot to fire back at the enemy, but thankfully I quickly got a frantic message of the pirates begging to take everything they had. Well, that was a good haul, so I decided not to say no, even though I did hate him, and soon after I realized that Scoops, he was a good doorman, but maybe he wasn't really cut out for his job, so I decided to retask him to operate the shields, as I knew he would be much better at this task, and I told Smith to take over as the doorman job. And I told you the same thing I told Scoops the other day before, that being a doorman is what leads you to be the captain. Whoever controls the doors controls the ship. What I didn't tell him, however, was that I was still the one controlling the doors. I secretly decided to reroute the panel control to my private captain quarters. But at the very least he could work on making the doors stay locked or open for longer than they normally could, so it was still relevant. I just gave him the door controller job, so I didn't want him to be crazy with power. I had one more jump to make. I was tempted to upgrade my reactor, but I was even more tempted to upgrade something else. For the time being, however, I decided to save my scrap, because one might never know what the future might bring. I made the jump, and my scouts picked up a Linus vessel in the system which appeared to be navigating a rich debris field, harvesting the minerals. Well, I decided that it wouldn't be angry if I tried to harvest some minerals myself. But as I attempted to navigate the debris as well, the ship decided I was too close to comfort and decided to harvest me instead. They had powerful weaponry, one that thankfully couldn't quite easily cut through my shields, and as for the missile, well, I could just avoid the missile entirely. With my stealth system, oops, I bent the time by accident, but I stopped doing that. So it was all good, don't worry about it. Either way, I was waiting for the enemy weapons to start firing, and they did, and well, one of them managed to hit me despite my stealth systems engaged. I decided to wait it out a little bit longer since I missed my ideal window to strike, and then, well, I started firing. I was able to damage the enemy shielding, but unfortunately I wasn't able to take it out. I was, however, able to damage the enemy engines, which would hopefully prove useful for me in the future. Then I opened fire again, completely disabled the enemy shields, and I knew I could engage auto-fire and finish the enemy off quite easily from then on. However, my stealth systems took a little bit of damage and I had to repair them. My hoe has also seen better days. Oh, the beauty, the anteater. She's still holding strong, however. And I was able to grab a lot of scrap from the asteroid, or rather, whatever the debris field we found ourselves in. I told my ship and my crew, I also talked to the ship, don't judge me, to jump at the next to the next long-range beacon, and I found a vessel willing to trade some fuel for some drone parts. Fortunately, I had no use for the drone's parts, so I decided to reject the offer, power up my main FTL drive, and make a jump. I could either go to a civilian sector, a place where everything would be peaceful and safe, or to jump to a Slack-controlled nebula, a place where everything would be the exact opposite. Normally, I'm a man of danger, and I enjoy danger everywhere I go, but I decided that the Slack-controlled nebula, most of all, is a place where I would not dare set foot with my current ship that relies so hard and heavy on its sensors. But then, I drank a bit of tea and thought to myself that the best adventures happen in the Slack-controlled nebula. So this is exactly where I told my crew to head off to, but I gave them another made-up reason as to why I would actually dare to go to this kind of nebula. The Slacks that lived in it, well, they were a leisure-centered civilization. Everything in the Slug life was done in the pursuit of more currency and more time in which to spend it on extravagant adventures. This inevitably led to much treachery in an open space. I had to be very careful. This area was quite dangerous, but to my amusement, the very first thing I found in the nebula system was a store. A huge Slug teleported from nowhere onto the bridge, and then it appeared and then it showed me all the watches it had in its pockets. I don't usually carry a watch, instead I asked my main computer to tell me what time it is. But then he said, hey, apparently he had a bunch of crew members stuck in his pockets as well. I asked how big his pockets are, and then he showed me the pockets, and they were quite big indeed. So, I checked the wares that he was offering. A defense scrambler. That wasn't entirely useful, actually. A rest ion field, which would protect me from the enemy ion damage. Those are quite useful, actually. And an emergency respirator. Those aren't that useful in my honest opinion. I also had an opportunity to grab some mind control technology, which paired up with our superior detection systems, whatever they were called. I'm not a very good captain. Like I said, I'm a doorman. Well, either way, a mind control system could be quite useful and could help us win this whole affair. However, the enemy also had a bunch of interesting weapons that could serve the same purpose. And more crew to use. All of this was very tempting, actually. I decided that I could afford to get... Well, I decided that I don't know what I want to get, so I could have gotten a crew member. Another crew member? Well, never had, especially if this was a rockman, who was apparently very good at repairing things and working on the engines. But he was a little bit expensive. I also had the opportunity to get some heavy iron weaponry, which was very tempting. It would allow me to actually efficiently cut down through the enemy shielding. I also had a laser charger, which they're good for some pirates, low-key scumbag pirates, not good for me, and a pug beam. Well, I already had my trusty mini beam, so I decided against this, but a heavy iron, those go a long way and they're quite useful in their own right. With the heavy iron on board, I decided that, well, it's a very tempting idea to also get a mind control, but in order to get that I will need to sell a lot of stuff I had on my ship, and I decided to do against it. Instead, I was deliberating whether or not to pay the slug to fix my ship's dents a little bit, and thought to myself that while his prices were not the cheapest, they weren't very extravagantly expensive either, and it was worthwhile to get my ship all the way to the green, since this was a very dangerous sector after all. Next up, I'll need to upgrade my weapon array, as heavy iron itself, while great, well, it needs some upgrades to actually be properly operational, but that would be our job for another time. Right now, all I needed was dual lasers and a mini-beam, or so I assumed. But because I wasn't sure of that yet, I decided to jump into a location when there were no enemy ships. Apparently, at the very least. When it comes to slugs, no news is not necessarily good news, so it seems like nobody wanted to confront me in that empty system, and I found another stall. I could go quite far away from the long-range FTL beacon, but I decided that a detour was worthwhile since there was probably nothing useful I could buy at the store now that I spent all my credits on the pad job. Either way, I found a deserted spot of slack space, another waste of fuel, and I started thinking to myself, will I have enough fuel to make it through this sector? Either way, however, I kept going, and the HQ contacted me advising to upgrade my weapons, but alas, I could not comply. I did not have enough scrap to do that. I found a large number of small stations for travelers in the area I arrived to, lit by guiding lights and advertisements. Only slack ships were docked, so I decided it was better to avoid confrontation and stay clear of this mess. I moved into a location I knew a ship would be awaiting me. I checked if there was any system at all I could improve, but my crew members just shook their heads and said that this is as far as we go. We have to engage or go to a store and waste some of our fuel. I had nothing interesting to sell at the shop, nothing I was willing to part with, and I decided to make my way to a possible ship and drink some tea in preparation for what is about to come. What I found was a slug transport ship stationed near the beacon with a military escort ship. They messaged me saying they were waiting for a customer for ages. Honestly, if I declined, they would tear me to shreds. They had a fire beam, they had a chain iron weapon and a dual laser. On top of that, most importantly, they had a triple layered shielding, one that my weapons could never go through. Not even if I used the heavy iron that I couldn't probably power. I decided to ask to see their goods. So, they decided to explain some ground rules. I was cautious but ready to understand, so apparently they said that they accept no trades, no coupons and no refunds, and that purchases were finer. I said that I understand. I was willing to do anything they told me to do because I was afraid for my life. So apparently they had some very shitty products to sell, as they kept going on and on and on about the lack of insurance and customer service. So I just said that this was not a problem. And eventually it seems like he gave me some fuel. Interesting. And then he opened the shop to me. Interesting again. So, the wares that he has presented me with were stealth weapons. Stealth weapons. What else could I ask for? I also found some flak and Hermes weapon and an iron standard, which is less awesome. But a flak weapon and Hermes and stealth weapons. I wanted all of this, but I just spent all of my... I wanted to say crap. Well, scrap is kind of flak. Oh wow. So, if I were to sell the heavy iron and just spend all my credits on, I still wouldn't be afford to get anything. I would need to sell something else as well. But I needed the longer scanners, the recovery arm, and at least 2 weapons to have a chance of surviving this affair. The best thing I could do out of this situation is get some more fuel. Since, well, might as well get something out of the situation. And I prepared to move on in disbelief of this whole situation. The one time I didn't want to stall, well, it was time to find somebody easier to kill, and I found a small slug scout. Apparently they were willing to go for a direct attack, and I was very thankful for this. They had a double layer of shooting, but a double layer of shooting is still something I can't punch through. I just have to make sure that I do not allow my shields to be disengaged, or the enemy miniature beam would be able to carve through my ship as well. So, I was ready to dodge and ready to attack the enemy ship, and engaged my stealth systems just in time before the enemy was able to pierce through them with their laser weapons. So next up, I opened fire again, and I was able to punch through the shields, disabling one layer of them. Excellent. However, then I realized there is a fire. I don't like when there is a fire. Fires are usually not good. Then I realized I'm not micromanaging my weapon systems, but I was able to disable the enemy weapon systems and disable the enemy shields as well. So, the Slag admitted that I bested them and accepted what was in their storage in exchange for their lives. I decided to let them live since I had a real bad fire to deal with first. So, they transferred a meager amount of material and, well, told me to get to GTFO essentially. So, I told my crew to repair. They lost a crew member. No, Lego died! Lego died! Here I was, walking down from the captain's cabin, confidently drinking my tea, saying, "Oh, another close call, eh?" And there, I saw it. Lego's body on the floor, decapitated. It appears that one of the enemy lasers was actually able to breach through the hole and finish off the poor fella before I even noticed. And I let those slugs live. I'll never be able to live with myself after that. I never will. Well, Smith, nobody can replace Lego, but you have to. It is a tall order, I know, but it is with heavy heart that I must ask you to fulfill this duty. A moment of silence for a lost friend. Okay, that wasn't long enough. Let's go. As I said, I'm just the doorman. And acting captain. I'm not the proper captain. There are a few more vicious beasts in the galaxy than a slug with his back to the wall. The fluttering ship armed with fire weapons was a remote hacking tool that tried to disable my door systems, and they were trying to ban me out. Huh? Oh. Oh, that was a problem. That was a problem indeed, but thankfully I had a stealth weapon. So, as soon as the enemy opened fire... Actually, I didn't have to worry about that. I just had to fire at the enemy ship. And then realized I am not able to actually avoid it. Soon after, I realized there's fire on board and did my best to avoid it, and then also avoid the enemy missile, which thankfully did miss me. So, I opened fire with my laser again and fired upon the enemy shooting weapon systems, which apparently was good enough to withstand this. That was very unfortunate, unfortunately. Unfortunately, yes, I can speak English apparently. But then I was able to damage the enemy systems some more, and it turns out somewhere there was potentially a fire. But I didn't see it, so I hope that there wasn't, and I was just being overly paranoid. So I was able to punch through the enemy shoots again, but the enemy had very good crew when it came to fixing the ships, their ship as it turns out, as I had a very hard time to actually get through and permanently destroy their shootings, but things turned out to be okay in the end. The slag ship broke apart, and I took whatever scrap was left. I told Scoops and Smith to heal up in the medbay as I drank some more tea, trying to calm my nerves. Lego's death. I will never forget it. The moment when I realized he was gone. I need to drink and move out of this place ASAP. Soon after, I was surprised to find a ship without a slag markings, stranded all the way out of here. Well, I moved in to provide assistance, but then I realized those were pirates. I quickly considered my options. They had a double layer of shooting, one that I couldn't punch through, and then I realized I forgot to upgrade my weapons. Lego's death must be a strain, and I wasn't able to think properly after that loss. The enemy had a halberd beam and a laser weapon, but nothing dangerously scary. So I decided to ignore common sense and be ready to attack, hoping this was a wise call. The drums of war started playing, and I was ready to take vengeance. Take vengeance for Lego. Turns out vengeance was not in the cards today, and I quickly activated stealth in a panic after what happened. Probably about the idea. Okay, turns out there was no fire on board my ship. I feared there might be for a second, but turns out there wasn't. I was able to, thankfully, use my beam to cut through the enemy shooting, which allowed me to potentially burst through this again next time around with a little bit more ease. Then I fired upon it once more time and then used my beam to damage the enemy weapon systems, but that wasn't enough. The enemy beam damaged my stealth systems, which was fairly bad, but thankfully not bad enough. I decided to fire again at the enemy shooting, getting ready to disable the enemy weapon systems. They begged for mercy, pleading for the lives, offering a very large haul of fuel. Oh, no matter. Not after I lost Lego. We all need to live and forgive. Do I hear fire nearby? Or am I just being paranoid? Lego's death is making me jumpy, but I think it is alright. I told my crew to scout the ship, but I didn't find any obvious source of fire, so clearly it must have been my imagination. I told everybody to go back to the station as I prepared to upgrade my ship, but first I wanted to get a good look at my surroundings. Right, no stalls in the view. It's about time. My weapon systems became a little bit more extreme. I was willing to divert power if necessary, and I did just that. I needed my engines to be as operational as possible, but I needed my heavy iron to be operational even more if I wanted to stand a chance against the enemy ships. I prepared to jump to the next location. And over there, I had the drums of war again, and I was very happy about upgrading my weapon systems. I found a slug light surveyor, and looks like, well, the enemy crew teleported on board my ship, and at the same time, well, they powered up their weapons. But their weapon systems were quite pitiful, honestly, and the only issue was the fact that there were intruders on board of my ship. I wasn't sure where they are right off the bat, but soon enough I realized they were in my door bay. That's somewhat annoying, I suppose. I got ready to engage my stealth system as soon as the enemy launched their EMP cannon. And then I moved in my crew to heal up a little. Oh wait, I couldn't heal it up. Well, that was an issue actually. I decided to save one of my crew members if necessary, if at all possible, and move in to kill the remaining slugs. And then I realized I could have been firing this whole time, so I set my dual lasers to fire, and then the beam, which was able to damage the enemy weapon system somewhat, which was good. But my crew, well, my crew couldn't take another hit. I was praying it wouldn't have to. So I then decided to set my weapons to auto fire, told my crew to return to stations and fire with everything I had. First the beam, then I decided to stealth away from the enemy EMP gun or the ion weapon, and finally I was getting ready to fire again with the heavy iron and the dual lasers as well. The heavy iron hit iron more like, but the dual lasers did not, so I was sitting ducks for a moment. So I did to disable O2 in hopes of getting a better shot, but no cigar unfortunately. I had to synchronize my weapon systems again if I wanted to have a chance at this. And I lost the mini beam, which was a very big issue. And I kept losing things unfortunately, and I also lost the O2 after I disabled the O2. That couldn't be. I had to keep powering up the engines if I wanted to. I decided I had to bail. This was too dangerous. I had to go to an area where there was another ship or to the exit straight away, ignoring potential bounty I could find. I was afraid I would lose everybody on board. I had to make a run for this. I ordered an emergency jump out of this place. And told my crew to repair the O2 supplies as quickly as possible. The HQ from the Twitch headquarters warned me that the imagined fire may have been Lego's ghost. That just set everybody on edge. But maybe I've been flying around this space long enough to believe the ghost stories. Since I knew I was in one, I decided to drink some more tea for the time being to try and calm my nerves. Alright, with that in mind, I was ready to send Smith back to engineering, Frank Pan back on the weapon duty, and Jim Longtongue back behind the steering wheel of our glorious anteater. So with that in mind, I decided to check out what the next sector was, and it turned out to be a Zoltan-controlled sector. I hate this Zoltan. I never trusted them, and I never will. And soon after I realized I forgot to repair my door control systems. I knew there was a draft coming in from somewhere. Turns out the draft was coming from the space. Well, let's go ahead and repair it, shall we? Also, power up my weapons. It's always good to have your weapons powered up as much as possible. Told my crew to return to the station soon after the patch-up job was complete, and checked out what options I had. I had very little scrap left, and store was not an option, but the distress beacon was a very big risk to take, especially without being able to upgrade my reactor. I had nothing to sell at the store either, however, so I decided that out of all my possible options, the distress beacon was my best bet to earn some quick credits at the store. I made my way to the distress beacon and I found a ship emitting the broadcast message. It was the NG. They had a triple layered shielding and some decent weapons on board as well. They were out of fuel and asked me to give them some. Well, I had plenty. I decided that what goes around comes back around, so I gave them some fuel. And in return, they gave me a pike beam. Wow, never expected that. The pike beam would be quite a substantial boon in our travels, and I decided that it wouldn't be a bad idea to have it installed. I gave my crew the order, and they immediately got ready to, well, get it on board. Unfortunately, the pike beam required quite a bit more power than the miniature beam I was running with beforehand, and I also needed to have dual lasers powered at the same time to have a chance of running the ship around. But nonetheless, the pike beam was a substantial upgrade. Not sure how I would be able to afford all of this. I decided to think my options and weigh my options and keep the miniature beam installed for the time being, just for now. Have the dual lasers on duty. No, the miniature beam, that's more important. And I decided that before I visited the store, I could also instead go to another distress signal in hopes of finding some more scrap to use at the store, or rather to use to upgrade my ship a little bit more. I found a resource for the distress call, a small research station. Appears a small laboratory fire got out of control, and I had a strange sense of deja vu, as I've seen this situation before. I would never ever risk my crew in this kind of event, and trying to dock was a suicide mission, but I felt like after what happened to Lego, I could not allow another soul to be lost to flames, so I decided to dock in and try to rescue the survivors. My hull was badly damaged, and it turns out I wasn't able to save anybody. The station blew up before I could do anything, tearing my piece apart, my hull apart rather. At the very least, I was able to scrap the parts, and soon after I was fixing the O2 supplies, and at the very least I knew I would be able to upgrade my weapon systems, albeit ever so slightly, once I visited the shop. I drank some tea and prepared to run a hard bargain with the Zoltan. Actually, the Mantis as it turns out. That was a surprise, but nevertheless, I'll make do with what I have. Oh. Now the issue was, if I sold the mini-beam, I still wouldn't quite have enough money to upgrade my weapon system and my reactor at the same time. I just wouldn't be able to do that. But the pike beam was an expensive kit that I could potentially sell for a decent amount of scrap. This would afford me anything I wanted, a backup battery for instance. It would allow me to repair my hull a little bit. Even now it wouldn't be enough to get me a drone control, but either way, there are a lot of things I could potentially get from here. If I were willing to part with my newly acquired weapon. Oh wow, Vulcan. I love a Vulcan gun. But alas, that is yet another thing I could never afford. Not with my current ship upgrades, where they are. I decided that as much as I would love to use the pike beam, the miniature beam is what I need more than anything. I sold it, and with that I was able to potentially upgrade my weapon systems in the future, but I decided against this. I could upgrade my shields in the future, but in order to do that I would have to upgrade a lot of my reactor, and that would cost me 50 scrap to upgrade it twice. What would be cheaper, however, was to acquire a backup battery. I could use it to power, well, for instance, my shield technology, or maybe my engines in the times of need. I thought it was a good investment, and I decided to spill the scrap, as well as paid whatever I had left for the patch-up job. Now I was ready to jump again, and I hoped that this ship, now in its current state, would be enough to take on whatever was out there in space that was trying to kill us. And soon after, I found intruders on board. Somewhere. Trying to tear my ship to pieces. I would not have it, but they already started tearing it to pieces. And unfortunately there was very little I could do, especially with my medbay being damaged. And I knew I had to repair the medbay if I wanted to have a chance of getting out of this alive. So I started working on the medbay as quickly as I could, and then I ordered my crew to hide inside the medbay, as I vented all other areas aside from the medbay. I took some damage to my shooting, but soon after the enemy was forced to come after me into the medbay, where I knew I could win against whatever they had. Soon after, the intruders were all killed. I was able to pressurize the ship again and fix the shooting while allowed scoops to heal up. We made a few quick decisions in there, but those decisions were good enough to save us in a tough situation. I was proud of myself for once in a very long time. I told my crew to go back to its posts and got ready to leave, as I drank even more tea. Soon after, I found a refueling station, selling fuel at a ridiculously low price. I regretted paying for the patch-up job at the store that I just left, but at the same time, I needed that haul, so maybe it was for the best. Although those prices, they're just unbeatable, but I had to ignore the station and be on my way. The ship was somewhat pressurized, oxygen levels were low, but I decided not to wait and find the next ship I could. Over there, I found one of the rebels' unmanned scout ship with very powerful shielding technology, a hacking device, and a bunch of laser weapons. With that in mind, I decided to engage stealth technology ASAP, so as to not allow the enemy hacking device to, well, plug into anything, as the enemy had a very powerful laser at their disposal. Extraordinarily powerful, in fact. And they disabled my shield technologies as well. And I wasn't able to punch through anything. I had to disable auto fire and get ready and turn off the O2 just to give myself some more chances to dodge. Oh, that was such a big hit. Such a big hit indeed. I decided to stealth away and fire while stealthed, which was never the ideal scenario, but that still wasn't enough. And with my oxygen supplies gone, I knew I would be toast soon enough. I already had very low oxygen in the first place, so I fired everything I had in hopes of being able to pass through the enemy shooting, but alas, that wasn't the case. My crew was in a panic, and as was I. Everything was just flat out horrible, and I lost the drive calls. I wasn't able to pilot the ship anymore. I fired the heavy iron and got ready to fire the dual lasers again, hoping I would be able to destroy the enemy defenses, but that wasn't the case again. I lost the O2 one more time, and I still wasn't able to pilot my ship at all. I was able to, however, stealth finally, even if for a brief moment of time. I decided that there was no point in trying to fix the stealth system since it was still being hacked. I started firing willy-nilly, trying to get through the enemy systems, but the enemy ship was just dodging too well. I powered up the oxygen supply, but then I started losing my crew members, and I still didn't have a functioning... Frying Pan was the only crew member that was left alive. I decided to start healing her, but then everything started blowing up. And that is the end of our story. This was all recorded on a black box, later recovered by the next team. Well, did you enjoy my little story? That was so silly, it was really hard to keep going, but I made it to the end. I mean, not to the end of the map, but honestly, this mission was doomed to fail. I knew I would probably die around a sector ago, honestly. I was just doing quite terribly. I never had enough scrap to upgrade my ship properly. My weapons were crappy. I mean, you saw it right now. This ship should have been a piece of... well, not really a piece of cake. That was a really powerful ship, actually, we just faced. But, yeah, that wasn't very good. That wasn't a good run at all, actually. But we made it relatively far by being cowards, so I'm proud of that part at the very least. I'm glad you people enjoyed it. I really am. Let's check out my stats. And I warn you, my stats for stealth ships will be awful because I never do well with those. I'm just very bad at playing the stealth game. Yeah, pretty bad stats. PSN Anteater. I'll always remember you. Most likely. Maybe. Either way, let's go back to main menu, ladies and gentlemen. This was Pangolin Advisor. Very happy that you actually joined me. And is there anybody worth raiding before I end the stream? I always try to raid. There's Fran, I suppose. I could raid her. I might as well raid her. She's an Overwatch streamer, so if you're at all interested in Overwatch, well, I will let you watch her. Either way, it was Pangolin Advisor. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you online.